Welcome back to Kevin Toll Reads. It's Saturday Shorts, my favorite day of the week. I love short stories, and I have two that are the epitome of why I like short stories. I hope you're ready. We're going to talk about these, give you my review of these two great ones. I really enjoyed both of them this week, which I've been on a really good short story kick. I don't know if it's just, I don't know what it is. I like short stories to begin with, so it shouldn't be a shock, but at the same time, I've really had a good run here, so I'm happy about that. So let's kick it off in high fashion, as Brian Lee Durfee would say. We're going to jump right into The October Country by Ray Bradbury. This collection, I read the short story The Small Assassin, and I didn't know what to expect here. This sounded good, and it was published in 1962. It's 20 pages in length. The genre, the theme here, we're going to get into that. So let's dive right into the summary. So Alice Lieber wakes up not knowing what is happening until she kind of understands, like, hey, I think I just delivered a baby. And unbeknownst to the doctors, the nurses, and her husband, David, she knows that the baby is trying to kill her. David Lieber is excited, obviously, at the hospital because what they've been planning to do and have a child is coming to fruition, and the baby is born healthy, and according to Dr. Jeffers, everything seems to be right as rain. But after they get the baby home, Alice, and during her recovery, is not sure that everything with the baby is right. And Dr. Jeffers meets with David to let him know, like, hey, I have some concerns over Alice. Some of the things she said during delivery and now some of her erratic behavior has my attention, and I want to give you my take on it. And I thought that was a really interesting premise and summary of this. What makes it a good short story is it's a simple premise. Obviously, we're talking about a birth of a child, but it's turned on its head because what should be this happy time is not a happy time. And I think that's where you get a lot of the distinction here, the jarring contrast that creates this psychological upheaval of the story, what transpires with Alice, her crazy thoughts that maybe aren't so crazy, how the baby is perceived and its ill intent creates this overpowering sense of dread throughout the story. Dr. Jeffers seems to be the only voice of reason as David is trying to understand why his wife is talking and making these grandiose statements, but is starting to uncover things that are weird as well. The ending, the climax of this is really well done. There is an excerpt that I wanted to share with you. David and Dr. Jeffers are having some discussion post delivery, and Dr. Jeffers says to David, you won't admit it naturally, but people do not enjoy admitting hatred for their loved ones. And that is very fitting for this short story. In terms of rating, I gave this a 4.3. I thought it was a very solid read. It's fast paced. It's plotted well. I think Bradbury did a good job of being consistent with both plotting pace and the characters. He kept the character universe pretty small, and it works really well as a short story. It's definitely more of an atmospheric buildup, a dread, and it's done really well. Overall, I think I obviously enjoyed this a lot. I think Bradbury is slowly becoming, as I read more from him, he's definitely becoming one of those authors that I think I'm going to connect with really well. I enjoy his writing style. I think his pacing is good, and I think he does quite a few things very, very well, which makes him very enjoyable and very likable from a reader standpoint. And so that is my take of The Small Assassin by Ray Bradbury. I gave it a 4.3 out of 5. Now let's jump into the next one. I went back to Louis L'Amour, believe it or not, and I went with this short story collection. I've been wanting to get to this. With These Hands is a short story collection from Louis L'Amour. This was published in 2002. Obviously, the short stories come from different points out of his writing career is this particular short story, Fighters Don't Dive, is 28 pages in length. A summary of this is we're talking about the prize fighter Flash Moran, who's an up-and-coming boxer. He seems to be catching the eye of a lot of different people, making his way for a title bout, but he's also catching the eye of other people that are maybe not in his corner, so to speak, especially Blackie Morallo, who is a local guy, gangster, better, not to be trifled with kind of guy. Flash upsets Morallo in the very beginning of the story, and he runs into some of his thugs who want to remind Flash that of his place in the boxing hierarchy, where betting and odds and rigged fights are truly who decides who wins. And so what makes this a really good short story, it's an interesting premise, because I think both it was a little jarring having a Louis L'Amour that I've kind of just grown to know, like writes Westerns, and then we're writing a boxing story. But as I did kind of some retrospective thinking in the Sackett book Lando, he wrote a really good fight scene in it. And I thought again, he wrote the fight scenes here really, really well. One thing that really stood out too was the pace. I thought the pace was fantastic in this book. It really moved things along. The fight scenes, again, I think they're really well written. I think L'Amour can write boxing really well. Obviously, if you've watched my video on him as an author, I did a Why You Should Read on Louis L'Amour, and he does have some boxing background, so this doesn't surprise me in the least that this short story, and I believe a few others, have to do with boxing. I really liked some of the side characters, although they were brief in this story. I thought they added value and added some context and some layers to the story, so it wasn't just one-dimensional. I thought Ruth, the mysterious kind of woman that he's interested in, I thought she was interesting. I thought the other fighter, soldier Barnaby, was and how he comes to him needing help, and you don't know if you can trust him. Is it a bluff? Is it a double bluff? I thought that was interesting. Chip Kelly, his trainer and kind of manager, and his advice that he gives him here and there, I thought was also interesting. In terms of do I dislike anything, I thought the ending was abrupt, which I say a lot when it comes to L'Amour, but this one, I wish there was just a page or two more after the fight and the ending. I thought just a little more sunsetting, I thought would have made it even higher on my list. In terms of excerpts, I do have one I wanted to read because, again, I think L'Amour's writing is very well, and he writes the fight scenes really well. Obviously, I mentioned his fight scenes at the end of Lando from the Sackett series. I thought that was really good, but there's definitely some in this short story as well that makes up the latter third of this short story that are really done really well. So let me read you an excerpt here. But he slipped the next left and came in, slamming both hands to Moran's body. Smiling grimly, Moran stabbed 3 times to Barnaby's split lip, stepped in and hooked high and low with the left. Barnaby's eyes were wild now. He charged with a volley of hooks, swings, and uppercuts that drove Flash Moran back and back. Moran got on his bicycle, fled along the ropes, circled into the center of the ring, where he feinted with the right. As Barnaby came in, Flash Moran crossed his right to the chin. And that's just a little kind of sample of some of the fight, which goes on for a good 10, 12 pages here, and I think it was really well done. In terms of rating, I give this a 4.5. I thought it was great. I think if the ending would have been a little more fleshed out, maybe a couple more pages, I think this would have been a contender so far this year as the top short story. I think it's enjoyable. I really enjoyed reading it. I thought the fight scenes were very well written. It read like you were actually there watching the fight, in my opinion. I think L'Amour, again, proves he can write more than just a Western here. Overall, I think it's a great short story. I think this collection probably has more to offer to me, and I'm very excited to get to it. Similar to, like I mentioned, with Bradbury. When I did a little research, this collection has tales regarding a boxer, a pilot, a private eye, and a rancher. So I'm interested what else is in here when it comes to this short story collection. But I enjoyed the short story Fighters Don't Dive. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And that, my friends, is my take for Saturday Shorts. I had two good ones this week. I feel like I'm on a roll when it comes to short stories so far in 2025. But if you've read either one of these, or if you're familiar with Bradbury as a writer, please drop me a comment below. I'm always interested if there's other shorts or where I should also read when it comes to new authors. And I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday, and I will talk to you all on the next one. Thanks.